We shared some jokes. Okay, this webinar is being recorded, and I would like to welcome you to Info to Go today. This webinar is brought to you by the Idaho Commission for Libraries with funding from our friends at the Institute of Museum and Library Services. This is a monthly event that we host here in Idaho. Hopefully you'll join us for some more. And today's session, as I mentioned, is being recorded, and it will be available at our archives on our webpage. After the session, those of you that had registered, you will receive an email with that link, as well as an email for an evaluation. It's important to us to collect some feedback, not only to share with our funding source, but also to let us know how we're doing and tell us the kinds of things you would like to see from us. My name is Tammy Hollyhouse, and I'm your host today, and I am very pleased to bring to you our presenter today. Our presenter is Jennifer Redford. She works here with me at the Idaho Commission for Libraries. She is a youth services consultant. And Jennifer, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tammy. I'm very happy to be with all of you today. Part of my role at the Commission includes supporting libraries that integrate STEM concepts into their programming. So here at the Idaho Commission for Libraries, we have a few different programs that we've produced over the years that help libraries do more STEM. One of those is the Summer STEM Grant, which many libraries across Idaho received this past summer. We've also done a Fun with Math and Science program. And then when I go out and consult with libraries, I always try to encourage them to do more STEM programming. As a librarian in a public library, I also produced a lot of STEM programs for my community before I was at the Commission. STEM programs are a really fun way to engage kids and encourage them to learn outside of school. And everyone in the library has a role to play in providing high quality STEM experiences to your community. But this can be particularly challenging if programming is not part of your job or if you're unsure about using STEM as the focus of your programs. So today we're really going to focus on how frontline library staff, so those that are maybe more in customer service facing roles, or maybe your pages, how those folks can support STEM in your libraries. Because if your library is doing any STEM, everyone in your library can play some part in promoting it. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So let's talk for a moment about why we do STEM in libraries. It's before we get there, we'll talk about your library's mission. So most libraries have, everybody has a unique mission because all of your communities are unique and your library's mission is special to you. But most of them generally have focuses on improving the lives of community members, being a space for learning new things, and providing access to high quality materials and information. So most libraries do these things as part of their mission. So STEM programs and STEM resources can help your library achieve its mission. In Idaho, for example, STEM jobs are expected to grow 23% in the next 5 years. So if we're talking about improving the lives of the people in our community, we're going to want to help them get some of those STEM jobs because that's sort of the hot ticket here where we live. STEM encourages curiosity. So learning about science, technology, engineering, and math is something that really is something that continues to grow throughout your life. So you've never learned everything. There's always more to learn, which is where the library comes in. And a lot of the resources that you have in your library's collection are probably STEM focused. We'll talk a little bit more about that today, but when you really drill down and look at your collection, you're going to find STEM everywhere. So that was easy, right? Libraries should do STEM. It's part of our mission. I guess we're done. Nothing else to talk about. Not really. It's not enough just to understand that your library should offer STEM. You also need to know what is being offered and how you can support it. And that's easier said than done, especially for frontline library staff. Because let's be real, you are all busy. You probably have books to shelve right now. You need to work at the desk, you answer questions, you need to get the book drop. You need to check in all of the books, and then you need to check them out and probably repair some books and maybe clean something. The list of things to do at your job is endless, and it can seem like going that extra mile in supporting STEM is just maybe that one thing that you aren't able to do. Today, we're going to talk about small ways you can change your routine to help support STEM in your library and play a part in helping your library achieve its mission of improving your community. We're going to break down different ways that your library might offer access to STEM programs and resources, and talk about what you can say and do to support those, and how you can actually help use the library space to support STEM as well. So even if you're not producing a STEM program, you have a role to play in STEM. So we're going to go through a few different age groups and talk about their specific STEM needs, and then the small changes you can make in your routine to support those different needs. So we're going to start with the young kids, the storytime crowd. So almost every library offers some sort of story time for young children. And during story time, children learn a lot of different early literacy skills. Rhyming books help them learn the sounds of words, and picture books help them learn vocabulary and how to tell a story. Learning letters is also usually a focus of story time, but it's also a time when we introduce basic math and science concepts to kids. During story time, we often talk about numbers or we count things. There are a lot of rhymes and finger plays that involve counting up to 5, like 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed or 5 little ducks. Even describing something as big or little during story time helps children understand that concept. Sorting and identifying patterns in sound, colors, and shapes are also STEM-related concepts for this group of people, the young kids. So even if you don't do story time, we're going to talk about ways that you can help reinforce the STEM concepts that children and families learn during story time. So when you're checking out books to families after story time's over, ask the children to help you count the books that they are taking home as you scan them. So this is a really simple counting activity that everyone can do, and it really helps children learn their numbers. Give families a high five moment for focusing on STEM. So when you're noticing a family checking out concept books that focus on colors, shapes, measuring things, bigger, smaller, those really early math concepts, point it out to them and tell them they're doing a good job. That type of positive reinforcement, first of all, shows that you care about the customers that you're talking to, but also it reinforces that pattern with the families so that when they come back to the library, they'll continue their STEM journey with their kids. And ask children to help point out a big book and then a little book when you're talking to them, or maybe at the checkout desk. Something you can do to support STEM for little kids is create displays for kids with books about STEM concepts. And again, for this age group, those kids that can't read yet, we're talking about counting and numbers, books that explore colors or patterns or shapes. Recommend a good nonfiction book for a young child. Your nonfiction collection is full of STEM resources. Dinosaur books are a great intro for a lot of kids to science. So you probably are an expert on your collection, so be familiar with some of those really fun STEM books. And as you're taking kids through the collection or interacting with children, point out numbers around your library. If your library uses the Dewey Decimal System, there's probably end caps that have numbers on them. And you can start helping children make the connection between those numbers as an organization system. So the dinosaur books can be found in the 500s, etc. Or if there are other numbers like the address of the library or the library's phone number, point those out to kids. It's just a simple thing to do, but it reinforces that numeracy skill, which we want the young children to learn. And create a space for STEM for young children. So if the storytime person in your library is doing some sort of counting activity, like say they're doing 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed, see if you can get a copy of the rhyme that they're using or even the images, and just tape them up at the circ desk. That way when kids go to check out, they can count the 5 little monkeys just like they did in story time. and they can reinforce that skill that they were practicing during storytime programming. Growth charts are a really fun way for young children to engage in STEM. It involves counting and measuring how high you are, and then maybe comparing yourself to the height of another child, which is a good STEM concept. Create a sorting station. You can sort blocks into colors, or you can sort things into shapes. It's an interesting way to get kids to clean up, is to have them sort all the toys into different bins. Puzzles are a great way for young children to engage with STEM. And any sort of building blocks, Legos, or magnetic tiles. So for little kids, it's sort of the low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of easy things to do to get them involved with STEM. And you don't have to do that much. As simple as a quick counting game every time you interact with a young child can be enough. So the next group we're going to talk about, I call them the after-schoolers, but it's really those school-age kids who are reading, probably in elementary school, maybe early elementary school. Many libraries offer programs for elementary age school kids when school is out or during the summer months. And most of these programs tend to be STEM related. Even arts and crafts programs offer kids a chance to build something or play with color, which is part of science, measure something, which is math, or create something new, which might involve some sort of engineering or technology. If your library is in Idaho and has received one of our summer STEM grants, or if it's part of the Idaho Commission for Libraries Make It program, the kids may be tinkering with robots or 3D printers or doing science experiments in maker spaces. Engaging in STEM learning for children after school is fun, and it's in a low stakes environment. So it can make learning extend beyond the classroom. And it helps kids develop STEM abilities in a way that it's meaningful to them, because it's not necessarily curriculum based. So there's a lot of different ways that you can help school-age kids develop their STEM concepts without actually doing a STEM program. It's important to ask children open-ended questions about what they learned or did in a STEM program that your library may have just held. If you give kids a chance to explain what they've learned, it reinforces what they just learned, and it gives them a chance to learn any new science vocabulary they might be trying out. And they develop narrative skills, which are an important early literacy skill. Talk about your library's programs to families and caretakers. You can be a great publicist for your library if you just know the types of STEM activities that you're already offering, and you're able to connect with families who might be able to attend those programs. And then make math fun. Sometimes math can be not fun when you're in school, so the library is a good time to make it fun. You can have kids add up the books they're checking out, or for your older kids, multiply books. You can count the days until school is out. Having a countdown is a really fun way. A countdown to anything is just a really fun way for kids to engage with numbers. You can multiply snacks if your library is giving out snacks to the kids for whatever reason. So lots of ways to just do little fun math activities without actually having to do a program. Create displays that are STEM oriented for this group. So it's really important that children have STEM role models that they can look up to. So if you can focus on diverse STEM leaders for a display, that could really be impactful to certain kids. I really like fiction about science experiments, especially the ones that go awry. There's a lot of chapter books out there that sort of center around that topic and can be a fun introduction to science. And then try to pair fiction and nonfiction for these kids. So if you have a book about, science experiments gone awry, and then you have fun kitchen science experiments to do right next to each other, that might be a really interesting display for some kids. Again, you know the best STEM books in your collection, the ones that are super shiny and have all the fun things, or the ones that are well used because they're so great. So make sure you recommend them to kids and get them moving off the shelves. And prepare for out of school time. So even if you're not doing programming for kids, those kids are going to be using the library space, especially during school breaks, during the summer months, after school. So be prepared with STEM activities or STEM books for those kids during that time. STEM's sort of an easy one to pass off for kids that age. So it's kind of like if you build it, they will come. If you have STEM books, STEM activities in your library, you will keep the children occupied and maybe the noise level will go down. And create a space for STEM for this age group. I wonder questions can be as simple as, I wonder what happens if you put vinegar and baking soda together. You could write that on a whiteboard, maybe, or as a shelf marker right next to the science experiment books. If it's something a little more in-depth where kids might need to like find the book to answer the question, that could be fun. Or you could just have kids guess. That's part of the scientific method. Again, Lego, super popular. Puzzles, a great way for kids to engage with STEM. Tinkering stations. When I was in kindergarten, my favorite station was a place where we could take apart an old typewriter. And I remember distinctly just having a very fun afternoon taking apart a typewriter and putting it back together again. Stations like that can be really fun for kids. Noiseometer. So if you are in a library where the noise level is challenging with the school-age kids, you could create your own noise meter, just a poster board that has, a meter, like too much noise level's okay, you guys are really quiet, you should be a little louder, however you want to frame it, and have a little arrow that you can move back and forth. First of all, it signals to the kids if they're getting too loud, but the concept of a gauge and sort of trying to be quieter or louder based on where they're at on the noiseometer can be a really fun way to engage with a STEM concept. And then if you are in the position of being on a desk that you aren't you can't necessarily leave the desk, but it's a little slower, you could help out library staff who are doing STEM programming by helping them create a list of recommended online games or websites that focus on STEM, or even book lists. Doing some of that background STEM research can be really helpful and take one less thing off of library staff who are doing programming. If you have free time at the desk, or well, none of us have free time, but if you have a moment of downtime, that could be a good way to use your time. Okay, let's move on to teens. So most people in their teenage years have moved beyond the basics of STEM and engage in computational thinking and creating through STEM. So they're not learning like STEM concepts necessarily, or if they are, they're sort of a few levels above those elementary age kids. Their lives are very technology focused, and the technologies that they use can help them develop STEM abilities. So if a teenager is creating a video on a smartphone, that involves using an app, a camera, uploading the video to a site, maybe storyboarding if it's that type of video. And if your library offers any programming for teens, it's most likely STEM related or involves some sort of making skill. So teenagers, STEM is sort of their life in a way, but without being the actual focus. For teens, STEM is a method of creation and self-expression, but not necessarily a way to learn new skills. So when I say the medium is the message, because really teens are using a lot of STEM media, mostly their phones, but other media too, to express themselves and to create things. And you can best support teens and STEM by building relationships with teenage people and getting to know them and focus on helping them achieve their goals and vision. So for teens, if you want to help them with STEM, the first part is just building that relationship. So ask what their name is, what are they working on, compliment them on their phone, their shoes, their haircut, whatever. Can you tell me more about it? Just start engaging with teenagers. It's where the little kids, it was sort of easy to just throw a counting activity at them and there you've done STEM. With teens, it's going to be a little bit more work. So you have to put in the time. You can create a display of STEM-related books for teens. So focus again on media and technology, science fiction, and DIY. And I didn't put it on here, but also any sort of fandoms that you might notice. It would also be a good one. So for teens, focus on behaviors and not personalities. Remember, teens are still developing and their personalities are still developing as well. So when we're talking about reinforcing STEM habits or good STEM knowledge, uh, focus more on what they're doing and not necessarily on how they're doing it or their expressions. And teenage brains are still forming. Many teens are unable to pick up on facial expressions and social cues. So this is just a reminder that you'll have to be the adult and just go on with the awkward conversation that you might have to really get at what the teen that you're working with is trying to accomplish and how you can help them. Create a space for STEM. So Wi-Fi and charging stations, this actually is true for pretty much everybody. Having access to free Wi-Fi and charging stations frees up people to use their technology, which can help them engage with STEM. Have crafting areas or maker spaces if you're able to. And then voting or data visualization is one of my new favorite ways to engage with STEM. We recently did this at a really fun conference we had last week here at the commission called Futures Camp. And it was pretty simple. I just created a question of the day. Since we were at camp, we asked people how they like to cook their s'mores, and I gave a few choices. Barely cooked, near the coals, get them golden brown, burn it, and then blow out the flame so it's nice and crispy on the outside. And I can't remember what the fourth one was. But anyway, we had people vote on how they typically would cook a marshmallow, and that became our data visualization for the day. It was really fun because everybody got to participate, but they didn't have to do that much to participate. They just had to put a star on a chart, and that was it. But at the end, we had a really cool data visualization of how people like to cook their marshmallows. Okay, so the next group that we're going to talk about is called emerging adults. And as we move into the adult age groups, a lot of the STEM needs are going to become, it's going to be more on a continuum. So where with the kids who couldn't read yet, they have very clear STEM needs. They need to know about shapes, numbers, concepts, things like that. With adults, everybody has a wide range of experiences at this point and a different knowledge base. So I'm going to generally group some concepts into a few different age groups for adults, but really this can hold true for adults of different ages. So emerging adults may still be in college or not necessarily very established in their careers yet. A lot of libraries offer versions of Adulting 101 classes to address the needs of the emerging adults group. So those programs focus on things like balancing your checkbook and managing money, which is STEM, basic home and auto repair, STEM, cooking, gardening, all STEM. So all of these activities involve STEM concepts, but just in a real world context. So money management is math and logic, home repair is engineering and sometimes technology, and cooking is science and sometimes math. So even if your library doesn't offer programs specifically targeted at emerging adults, you can still support their STEM learning because um, this age group is using your library quite a lot. So we want to support their STEM needs. So this is where having conversations with customers and showing your good customer service skills is really going to be important. So have conversations that are focused on your patrons' needs. Why did they come in the library? Is there a problem they need solved? Sympathize with feeling uncertain. While balancing your checkbook may be something that everybody knows how to do, you think you had to learn it at some point. Cooking is another good example of we aren't born knowing how to cook. So learning these skills, you can feel uncertain and maybe you won't want to ask for help. So make sure you try to sympathize with your customers that are coming in. So pay attention to pop culture and trends for displays or conversation starters with this group. And work to improve your reference interview skills. So again, it's really important to be able to just chat with somebody and figure out what they need and maybe why they came to the library and connect them with something they didn't even know that they needed. and focus on STEM in the real world with this group. So again, we're looking to apply all of that STEM theory and the things you might have learned in school, but now all of a sudden you have to multiply in the real world, and it's harder than you think, even if you have a phone. Create space for STEM. So I really love the idea of adult DIY or tinkering station. And I feel like if some library could just rip off the Home Depot idea of having like a tiling class, but just have a station in your library where people could learn how to do their own backsplashes in their kitchen, that could be a really fun way to engage with a type of STEM, with engineering, but also just have fun with it and do DIY. Circulating STEM tools is a great thing to do, especially for the emerging adult group who might not be able to afford expensive cake pans or power tools or food scales, things like that. Let people try out those STEM-related tools at your library without having to actually invest some money in STEM. A bike repair station is another good example of a potential STEM space in your library for the emerging adult crowd, or a community garden. So midlife adults are super busy. They have families and careers, social obligations and hobbies, and they may only use the library with their children, and they're really hard to program for. So your library might not be doing very much STEM that is aimed at the midlife adults. For this group, making STEM easy and accessible is key. So for these guys, it's like hiding your vegetables in the spaghetti. It's important that all adults continue to develop their STEM abilities, because STEM and knowing about STEM really helps people process information logically and search for truth. And when people go out to vote, especially if you have maybe a library levy or a bond that you're relying on, you want them to consider information and evaluate it effectively. And part of citizenship is knowing um, how to, understand if the poll that you're reading is good numbers or bad numbers, if the information that you're making your decisions on is scientifically sound or not. And that involves having a good background in STEM. So we really want all people to know enough STEM concepts and know enough about logic that that they will be able to engage with STEM and become, good citizens. So if you're talking to midlife adults who are parents or caregivers, try to sort of leverage what their children are learning to transition that adult to a book from your adult nonfiction collection. So if the child is checking out a book about space, maybe recommend one of Neil deGrasse Tyson's great books. He's written several that are really fun to read. On like he has one called Death by Black Hole that's just a collection of space-related essays, and offer suggestions for helping their kids learn more about STEM. So this is where having sort of done some background research on different ways to help children engage with STEM can help you help the adults engage with children. Again, talk about what the adults are interested in. Believe it or not, most adult type hobbies are really STEM hobbies, whether or not people know it. So just ask, chat with people, find out what they like to do, and then put an awesome library book in their hand. And most likely that library book will be STEM related. So here are some STEM-based display ideas for adults. True crime, definitely forensics is definitely a STEM concept. Cookbooks, sewing and crafting books involve a lot of STEM, measuring, comparing, things like that. DIY and home and auto repair, health or diet books, history of science, music. A lot of music has STEM tie-ins, and that can be an interesting STEM display. Craft beer, super popular. And then maybe see if your library can offer a quick guide on spotting fake news or evaluating news sources. That might be an interesting way to engage those midlife adults with STEM in your community. And when you're talking about creating a space for STEM for adults, again, a tinkering or DIY station that is more geared toward adult needs, um, instead of a lot of maker spaces are more geared toward younger people, but adults have makerspace needs too. Um, One of my favorite ways that somebody has used a 3D printer was they needed a like a cover for their thermostat, and they couldn't find one they liked exactly. So the person created one using Tinkercad, and then came to the library and printed it out and got exactly what he wanted, and was able to customize his home the way he wanted. And I think that's just a great, easy use of maker spaces in your library. Adults like Legos too, and having Lego time just for adults can, um, really connect them with that engineering part of their brain, and it's just fun. Puzzles are really good for every age. You're basically going to see puzzles on the slides for almost all these age groups that we're talking about. Okay, so the last group that we're going to talk about in terms of STEM needs for an age group is senior citizens. Older adults who have grown children or who may be retired have unique STEM needs. A lot of services for seniors are increasingly accessed online, so there may be some actual tech help that you need to do for this group. Medical needs are also more prevalent, and understanding and accessing medical information can have a real impact on quality of life. As with other adults, they need to be able to critically evaluate and synthesize information as part of citizenship. So when you're working with senior citizens, check in with them about the devices that they're using or their technology needs. So offer to help get on the Wi-Fi, or get them started on the library's computer, or show them how to download ebooks or whatever downloadables your library offers. And then talk about STEM programs that your library is doing. Seniors can be really great social connectors in your community and can help you with word of mouth marketing. So even though your senior citizen might not attend the after school science experiment program, they can tell all their friends about it, and probably their friends are going to tell their grandkids, and um, it'll be a ripple effect. If you can get someone in the senior community who is evangelical about the work your library is doing, it can be really impactful. Also, you may find a great volunteer with lots of free time, especially if your volunteer used to teach science or be involved in a STEM field. There's lots of folks out there who um, do have a huge STEM knowledge base, and if you can tap into the potential in your community, um, it'll help everybody. So displays that specifically address the STEM needs of seniors include displays on medical information, again, true crime, handcrafts. Knitting is coding is one of my favorites, because when you think about some of the science and the patterning that really does go into knitting, it kind of is like coding. Military science, another great and interesting display for a lot of senior citizens. And then be patient and encouraging. STEM can be, it can honestly, for many adults, it can be really intimidating to think about learning a new concept or a new technology. So being patient and encouraging and sympathizing with them is a great way to help um, get them over the hump and help them access more library resources. And be ready to learn something new yourself. With all age groups, if you can demonstrate that you're learning along with the customer that you're helping, um, it can really make people, it can open people up and can really position the library as a place where everyone goes to learn. Create a space for STEM. You could set up a blood pressure check station. They have these in a lot of grocery stores, but there's no reason your library can't have one as well. Puzzles and other brain games, technology petting zoo. So if you have some tablets or robots or whatever technology your library is offering available for seniors to sort of kick the tires on and look at, that can really help engage them with STEM. And try virtual reality. Virtual reality is a great way for people with any sort of mobility issues to really participate fully in a virtual world. It can be a lot of fun. So if your library is not offering it, maybe find a way to bring in some virtual reality to your library in some way. Okay, so that was a lot of information. And we went through 6 different age groups and talked sort of one by one about how those different age groups that you might be seeing coming into the doors of your library might engage with STEM concepts in different ways. We talked about different things you can say. Hopefully saying those things won't be too much of a stretch and be too much of a, hopefully you'll just be able to build on things you're already saying to customers and just maybe intentionally put a STEM focus on it. We talked about different things you can do in the library to help support STEM and different ways you can use your library space to, again, support STEM programming or STEM learning in your library. So um, as you leave today, I just want to leave you with 3 sort of bigger ideas to help that you can use to help make STEM successful in your library. So your collection is full of STEM material and you are a collection expert. If you are shelving books or you're checking books in and out, you probably know your collection better than anybody else. And you know that you have a lot, that basically your whole nonfiction is mostly STEM. A huge portion of your collection touches STEM concepts. And if you can pull those out for people, you can really help them in their STEM development, and it's not very hard to do. Your patrons interact with STEM every day, and you can provide excellent customer service by supporting their STEM needs. And again, this is about being intentional about using your customer service skills to support STEM in your library. So if your library is doing STEM programming, you know what those programs are, and you maybe have 1 or 2 things you can say to customers to help promote the programs or promote the ideas of the programs. If your library isn't able to offer STEM programming, then you are doing your best to get the materials in your library that are STEM related into the hands of your customers and patrons, because they will need STEM so that they can improve their lives. And your library provides STEM-based programs and services, and you can help make them successful in so many ways, just by reinforcing the concepts of the programs or encouraging people to come to a program. That's a big deal. As somebody who did a lot of STEM programming, by the time you get everything planned and executed, um, having that word of mouth is maybe that one thing that you didn't do to get people into your program. And that's where working as a team with the rest of your library can really help make STEM a big deal. So that's all the information I wanted to share today. Doing STEM is not hard. It's something everybody can do. And in promoting STEM in your library and supporting STEM concepts is also something that's pretty easy for most people to do, and hopefully doesn't require a lot of extra work on your part. And it's something you can just integrate into the habits that you do. Okay, can I recommend any additional resources? Well, that sort of depends on what types of things you're doing. If you're trying to support STEM programs, honestly, your best resource is your colleagues and talking to them about what they're working on and why they're doing it. If you're looking for STEM projects or to understand more about how a certain STEM concept works, Google is a good thing. I really like the Steve Spangler website. He does sell a lot of science experiment tools, but he also has great videos of how he does his experiments, and he has really clear explanations about the science behind them. And I find that so interesting to be able to explain to somebody why Mentos dropped in Diet Coke creates the explosion it does. And the reason you use Diet Coke instead of regular Coke is because it's less sticky, because there's less sugar. So that's the secret. How do you keep up on the programs your library is offering? We're a large and busy public library. I would say focus on one of those age groups, because if your library is offering a ton of programs and it can be overwhelming. So let's say you just want to support STEM learning for that early childhood crowd. Then you really just need to talk to the storytime people, ask them what they're doing, and just start one-on-one with them. So having a specific audience in mind when you're thinking about STEM can help you be really intentional about it and can make it seem less overwhelming. Oh, thanks, Tammy. Does anybody else have more questions?
I was wondering if some of the people who are attending would like to share some of their science and STEM resources in the chat box. Jen mentioned the Steve Spangler Science website. Do any of you have others?
Oh, also, the Idaho Commission for Libraries has a really great STEM resources website.
We do, and we have this really awesome STEM toolkit.
Oh, I'm blushing.
The outreach toolkit. I'm going to go grab that link because it is pretty awesome. Let me go find that while you guys go ahead and enter some more things in the chat box there.
Oh yeah, local maker fairs are really useful for STEM programming.
It's a great idea, right? Yeah. She said yes and that's it. Let's see here. Let me find that STEM toolkit.
The STEM toolkit that we have at the Commission also has little social media blurbs that you can do to help advertise your STEM programs.
Yeah, which is really cool.
Yeah. So if you are on social media and that's sort of your thing, but maybe you don't do programming or marketing for your library, offering to write just a few blurbs about programs so people don't have to think up their own, or even researching hashtags that programmers might find useful can be very, very helpful and just take one less thing off of everyone's to-do list. Oh, suggestions for academic libraries. Good question. So you've got a lot of the emerging adult folks in many academic libraries, but again, if you're dealing with professors or maybe non-traditional students, you're going to have that midlife adult crowd too. So I think you have an opportunity to do a lot of passive STEM programming that doesn't require a lot of work and that anybody can do. So that data visualization, just voting on your favorite thing that we talked about for teens, could also be a fun one for that age group. Having a question of the day and then an answer that's STEM related can also be fun. And again, having blocks or Lego bricks out there for people to play with and engineer with can be really helpful.
And Jane, I'd also like to add that I've worked with a few academic libraries who are working to try to meet the needs of like the whole student, the person. And so they are beginning to offer resources for the students' children for, to serving them as parents as well as academic students. And another project that I was working on when Jen mentioned the data visualization, they were using it as ways to kind of get students to connect more with each other. So they were putting up things like a chart that said, if you didn't spend so much money on your textbooks, what would you spend it on, right? Just kind of fun ways to get that data visualization, but also to get students somewhat connected. Anybody have any other? Did you answer Jennifer Sue Walker's questions? Any hints for encouraging frontline staff to realize they can support STEM?
Yes.
Okay.
So
sorry, I was looking.
No, I didn't answer that question, but okay. I want to answer that question.
Great.
So I think the best thing is to start with one small change. So if your one small change is if you create library displays focusing on STEM-related library displays. Or as you're at the checkout desk, if you can find a way to integrate that number activity with children. So don't try to do everything, just choose the one thing. And I think maybe taking a moment to reflect on the amount of STEM resources in your library can really encourage more people to really focus on STEM. I really like to think of things as sort of in a retail model with in terms of circulation. So I want more people to check out more books. First of all, eventually that means less books to shelf because everything's just checked out all the time. But also it means people have more books in their hands and they're accessing more library information. So if you think about it, maybe not as encouraging STEM necessarily, but as a way to move the collection and increase your circulation stats, that can be the buy-in that some frontline staff might need to really start pushing STEM a little more. Because STEM really is a big part of a lot of library collections and a sort of a flashy part, it can be.
Sarah has posted another resource that she said she likes. It's a technology related resource. So thank you for that, Sarah. Anybody else have a great website they'd like to share? Or any last questions for Jennifer? We'll wait just a minute, see if anybody's typing in. Oh, that's too funny. I will tell my colleague who's in the next cubby that Kathleen says, bless you.
Thank you.
My colleague says, thank you, Kathleen. You're so sweet. So let's see. Sarah says her link. I'm wondering if it's because of the period. You might try to, let's see. Nope. So Jane is saying that Kate's link, which is, I'm sorry, Sarah's link, which is kate.murraystate.edu is not working. And I am having the same problem. It says the site cannot be reached. Sarah, do you want to check that again? I don't know if it's behind a firewall. If I click on, if I take off the S from the HTTP, I did get to the Kentucky Academy of Technology Education at Murray State. So let's just have, Sarah, would you just confirm that that is the site? Okay, it is. Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for sharing all this great information. Thank you to the rest of you for joining us for this past hour. And we'll see you maybe next month or hopefully before then. So thank you.